Alright, Evie and I are back with another Destiny 2 video. This is about something I wanted to talk about for a few days now, but it kept getting pushed off because other stuff kept happening, so I kept making videos about that stuff. But here we are, and we finally have a little chance to breathe, and I wanted to talk about Master Mode Vault of Glass. This is the first, Evie's rolling around, showing off the cameras, as ever. This is the first time we've gotten an alternate difficulty on a raid in an extremely long time. I don't even remember when the last time was we had it. I think the prestige difficulties, Leviathan stuff, things like that. But this time around, the rules have changed, and well, I think a lot of the stuff with Master Mode raids are well-intentioned. The execution seems a bit lacking in a few areas, and I think they're going to have to make some adjustments going forward if this becomes a regular thing. And they also said at one point they wanted to do Master Mode for dungeons too. So the problem is not really the difficulty itself. It's not like these are too hard. I do think fundamentally that raids do need a master hard, whatever you want to call it, prestige difficulty, because it's very weird that Grandmaster Nightfalls are like the hardest thing in the game, where like most raids on normal are just kind of cakewalks eventually. You still have to master the mechanics and stuff, but in terms of actual difficulty, not that hard. Hard mode, Vault of Glass is still not really as hard as a GM or anything. I think an entire raid at GM level difficulty might be a little exhausting, but this is sort of the common complaint I have heard with Master Vault of Glass, is that the difficulty, I think it's 1250, most other master activities are 1240, but in this case, there is no contest mode. So you can technically over-level for that. I've heard some people say they would just kind of prefer there to be contest mode, and that you just have to hit a minimum power requirement, and it's like plus 15 or plus 20 or whatever. I think GMs are plus 25 or something. So maybe not that extreme to make it like kind of a slog, but to a certain extent, some sort of contest modifier in place. The reason being is that the current process for like over-leveling this is bad, because it is entirely focused on artifact power. Power only went up by 10 this time around, and everything after that just has to be nothing but artifact power. And if you play a good amount of the season, you'll probably get, I don't know, plus 15 relatively easily. If you're really grinding, plus 20. If you're insane, that's like when because it's diminishing returns. So like the more you put in, like you get to higher and higher tiers of the battle pass and stuff, but eventually it just, no one is hitting these high caps. And the reason this whole system doesn't work is because the artifact system is still fundamentally tied to bounties after all this time. This has been a core problem with the artifact power since its inception, and I have never been motivated to grind artifact power because it is temporary and it is almost entirely done through bounty grinding. Now, we have seasonal challenges, although seasonal challenges are just very long bounties. And while I appreciate seasonal challenges from a Bright Dust perspective, and some of them give cool rewards, and at least early on, they're a good way to get through the battle pass quicker than just doing a bunch of bounties, we still have come up with a system where like the way to quote unquote, master a hard mode raid is to just grind the living hell out of your artifact power. So you're at a, instead of minus 20, you're at minus 10 or minus 5, or even on par if you can get to 1350 itself. And that seems like a poor system. It might work if we were still doing like a pinnacle type grind. And like this does answer the question I posed several videos ago, where I was wondering what the purpose of power at all was at this point, and the only thing I could come up with was easier farming of like master GMs, because GMs use, or master Nightfalls, because GMs use contest mode, so power doesn't matter there really up to after a certain point. And then artifact power is not used for anything like trials or Iron Banner in PvP, so there's no point for power. So technically this is the answer to that question. Power does matter in hard mode raids, and yet it's not really fun. Like I think people would just rather have the kind of consistent constant modifier rather than feel like they have to over level for a specific raid, and then it's going to reset at the end of this. So like all of their either 400, 600, 800 levels for the season pass, to get more power is going to be essentially for nothing, and they will have to start over again when we assume that power level will either adjust upward or stay the same, but they're going to lose all that power they grinded. So that's not a great system, and I see kind of the push to either have contest mode come back in some form, or they just got to rework the whole power system and, fix it so we're not just grinding bounties and challenges for artifact power, because that's not good. The second half of this is rewards. And I think this is kind of the fundamental reason that a lot of people are not super wild about this. So the rewards for this are time lost weapons, where they're kind of like adept weapons in terms of they take adept mods, you can masterwork them for extra stats. They're different in the sense that they're better than adept weapons because they come with a curated role. So like every weapon has a curated role of like 2 perks that are like maybe not the best always perks, but usually pretty good. In this instance, Fatebringer has Explosive Rounds Firefly on every roll, but then it also has 2 other randomized perks. So it's like essentially you're getting 3 or 4 drops in 1 drop, but they're tied to the challenges. And so like once you finish a challenge at a hard mode raid, unless you have spoils, like there's not a huge point in getting to the end, because all the rest of the gear for the most part is just normal Vault of Glass gear, and yet you're playing a much harder version of Vault of Glass to get it. And then there's kind of the volume of this, where there are 6 weapons, and there's only 1 time lost weapon available per character per week. And so to wait for Fatebringer or whatever, you might be waiting, if a season is only 3 months long, you might be waiting 6 weeks into a 12-week season to even get, 1 shot at the gun you're looking for, like the time lost variant. They have the additional perk of like each week there is stat focused armor, where it will be like it'll have a high distribution in one particular stat. Problem with that is there are 6 stats, and people are generally speaking only pursuing, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 of them. And then there are 4 pieces of armor that take stats, 1 piece of armor that doesn't take stats at all, yet can still drop Vault of Glass, the class item. And the fact that you are not guaranteed any armor, I don't think, throughout an entire Master Mode run. Like you might get a piece or 2, but you can also just get weapons and like get which would be normal drops from Vault of Glass. So there's no guarantee that you're going to get like 3 pieces of high recovery armor or something during a run. So like when you get it, it's nice, but it's kind of how raid armor should be anyway. And I just don't think that is enough of a motivator. So between 1 time lost weapon tied to a challenge, depending on what that challenge is, and then these, armor pieces that may or may not show up, everything being on a rotation for 6 weeks for weapons, and then 6 weeks for the stat distribution and the armor, it just doesn't really seem worth it to do hard mode raiding for at least most people. I guess just people who are looking for the challenge and content creators that are looking for less boring content, they can run that. But even those types of people, those the high end people seem like they would rather just have contest mode on this instead of giving people to the ability to hyper overlevel. And I also think that most people are just not generally satisfied with the rewards for this. I think this is kind of tied to the concept of adept weapons in general. I'm still sort of iffy on how adept weapons feel in terms of a kind of ultimate reward for trials, GMs, and now Master Mode raids. I don't know if they're enough of a motivator between the little stat boots are nice and, the ability to take adept mods are nice. I still feel like adept mod should be another slot and not replace the current slot that you have. This results in things like, everyone always has to use Icarus script for PvP, and then you can never put in anything else essentially. But you just don't have the ability to use that many mods. And then, the fact is, if you're playing all these other activities, chances are you're going to get many, many more normal rolls of something than you are a adept version. So it just seems like you're probably going to be satisfied with your god roll normal weapon like 99% of the time. And because of how rare these are, getting like a true god roll adept version of a weapon is just not all that likely. I think Master Mode raids do solve that a little bit because they give you those 2 guaranteed curated perks, which are usually pretty good. So it is essentially like guaranteeing 2 good perks, so guaranteeing, generally speaking, some very solid rolls on a lot of the weapons. And then there's the final piece of the puzzle that I think a lot of people find most Vault of Glass weapons somewhat underwhelming. I know everyone's nostalgic about Fatebringer, but I don't know if Fatebringer is even like one of the top tier hand cannons at this point. Is cool as some of its roles may be. Everyone has more Vision of Confluences that they can count, and we're currently not in a Scout Rifle meta, and I don't think that will be the best Scout Rifle going forward. We'll see about that. And then just like generally speaking, I don't know. Like there's two heavies. Machine guns are getting a buff. Hezen is very good if you get like overflow. It's going to be a top 2 rocket launcher, but it's still just kind of a rocket launcher. And Found Verdict is okay for PvP. I hate it for PvE. It's so slow. The point is like I think a lot of other activities have better weapons. I think Override has better weapons than Vault of Glass, frankly. I think DSC obviously have better weapons than Vault of Glass. So I guess this is just kind of tied to this current crop, but so like this big pursuit of an adept Vault of Glass weapon doesn't necessarily seem worth it, or time lost, or whatever we're calling them. So all of these factors kind of combine to make Master Mode VOG like not really worth it to farm over normal, like given the very few differences that you're getting, and it's really mainly just focused on the one drop of X or Y weapon, and then if it's not a weapon that's good in a particular week, like if you don't want, a Vision of Confluence or whatever, you're just probably not going to do Master at all that week because there's no real reason to at all, because Lord knows you're not going to do it on the off chance that you might get one high stat version of one piece of armor, maybe, or one or two. It just doesn't seem like enough of a motivator paired with the weird difficulty thing where you feel underleveled unless you are crazy grinding artifact power. So I think there's two main issues here. It's the rewards and it's the power grind type stuff that are kind of demotivating for most people even bothering with Master Mode. And maybe that makes regular VOG healthier and there will still be more people playing that, but I think in terms of what this was meant to accomplish, in terms of creating truly difficult, rewarding raids again, they might be close to the difficulty portion, and I don't think people were complaining about that necessarily. I did see some complaints about they wish that it wasn't just more champions and match game and a higher power level. They wish that mechanics had changed because that used to be the case in many hard mode raids before, where you needed to do kind of mechanics to complete stuff. I saw one idea where someone said they have all challenges active every week, and maybe each of those gives you a time lost weapon. And then that would they would be optional, so you wouldn't fail if you didn't do it, but it would be, a harder difficulty thing with more rewards instead of just having this one gun, one encounter, challenge rotation. So that could be something to consider. I haven't thought about it long enough to consider what the downsides of that could be, but I don't think this first iteration of this is quite there yet. We're getting pretty close to next season, so I don't know if they're going to change anything with Master Mode, ahead of that, but I'm sure they're looking for feedback. So that's, this is just kind of my thoughts on it and what I've heard from other people. So here we are, but we'll see what happens. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.